to a successful and powerful business network is communication. Personally, I would term communication as a way of exchanging information from one person to another through different kinds of mediums. Joined me today, I have the founder of Prowess Organization, Mr. Ramadan Chimbugwe, who is going to enlighten us more about communication. You're welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, briefly, who is Mr. Ramadan Chimbugwe?
Ramadan Chimbugwe is a Ugandan-born marketeer, communications coach, and travel consultant. Basically, those are the three aspects for which I'm known for, or through which I do my work. Born and raised here in Imbara, and I've also gone through school.
Let's call a bit about the schools.
I've attended Boma Primary School here in Imbara for my entire primary. And then from there I went to Ngano High School for my O level. From Ngano High School I went to Standard High School Zana for my A level. Then later I went to Makerere University Business School where I pursued a BBA and majored in marketing.
Which courses did you do at A level?
I did PEM entrepreneurship. Yes.
What forced you to deal with a course that was business oriented?
Business oriented. Ideally, for starters, I did a science based combination. My whole intention was maybe to get into the science kind of field for my university. But you know, when you complete your senior six, along the way, there are so many things that come up. That whole period before you get to campus, it's like you're going through some phase of self-discovery. So I later along the way noticed that I think much as I feel like I would want to take the science route, I think I would do so well if I pursued a business related course. So that's how I ended up making a decision to now do a BBA and majored in marketing. And that was precisely through the people that I was looking up to as mentors who were seeing things in me that I wasn't seeing. So they were able to sit me down and they advised me, and then I felt like, yes, I think much as the other side I can also take it up and do something. I think this is where I can really shine somewhere. So that's how I ended up taking the business route. But the entire motivation initially was to do something related to science.
Okay.
Yes.
It's a good story. So today we are going to talk about communication. As we all know, communication is a very vital thing. Be it in business, be it in our day-to-day life, communication is very vital. How, according to your own way, because I gave you my term of communication, how would you term communication?
I think your definition is really not far from what I would call the precise way of defining it, exchanging something to the other end between two individuals or maybe different people using different media. But the whole idea is that most of us, when it comes to communication, we only look at the one-way kind of aspect of it. You're conveying something, but you don't really take time to think about the other person that you're conveying the message to take care of their interests too, so that at the end of the day, they also understand for it to be complete. For example, if I want to convey something to you, for example, if you look at the messages that government has been sending out to do with COVID, you notice that there is a lot to do with terminologies to do with the entire COVID pandemic from the medical world. But they had to really find a way of narrowing it down to words that are very simple for the just that final person down there, the local person that you'd call them to be, to understand this message, because you have to take care of the interests of the person at the other end, the receiver, for it to be complete. Otherwise, if you don't do it, then there will be thing left hanging in there. Another scenario, you could have seen situations where the president came in and gave some presidential addresses to do with COVID pandemic. Then along the way, he also notices that some things were not clear, the way how people perceived or received them. And then he comes in the next day or after 2 days to clarify some aspects, meaning that something to do with how he communicated wasn't proper, because if it's proper, people should have perceived them well, like all the other aspects that you've given out in your entire speech. So feels like, and from the feedback that people give you, you can tell that something is not right somewhere, so I need to come in and I address it before it gets out of hand, because if it's not right, people will now perceive it differently, and it may now come into cause problems.
So that means for someone to become a good communicator, you have to look at your audience.
Yes, actually, there are a number of aspects that you have to put into context when you're looking at it, and your audience is one of them.
That is what I was going to ask you.
Yes.
What
So
are those aspects?
your audience is very key. For example, you need to understand the demographics of your audience. For example, what's the age of the people? What's their, maybe what language do they understand so well? What's their education background? What, for example, when you even look at it in the context of our country as Uganda, different people within our country from the different regions, they are at different social settings. Even their backgrounds are different. Somebody in Karamoja is totally different from somebody in Kisoro. Somebody in Kisoro is totally different from somebody maybe in Hoima or Eastern Uganda. So if I'm running a campaign maybe to do with malaria, and I'm telling people you need to really sleep under a mosquito treated, so there is a way how you will have to bring out that information, putting into context what the audience or that target group is. If you don't do it, then communication is going to be one way. You're just going to convey a message, but they will not understand it, and it will not serve the intended purpose. So you need to have your audience taken care of, and their interests, they come above your interest as a communicator. That's why the language you use, the words, they must be words that suit them, not words that suit you. Because if you're a computer scientist or maybe programmer, probably if you have to strictly follow your language, you're talking to maybe high school students who are in their work and you want to interest them to take the computer science line or profession, you need to narrow it down to a language that really resonates with their level of understanding.
That is true.
Yeah.
So the audience being one of them, what are those aspects, other aspects that an effective communicator has to have?
The other aspect is, which is the most fundamental aspect of communication. For example, when it comes to giving like talks, it is preparation. For example, like in public speaking, we say public speaking is precisely about the 3 P's. The first one is what we call the preparation. Preparation comes with what do I want to communicate, how am I going to convey it, how much time am I going to use, and how do I want to bring out this whole message. So you are like trying to come up with a mapping of all those aspects that you want your message to entail. And once you've done all that, doing the research, if I need an image, if I'm going to use a PowerPoint, if I'm going to use a flip chart, all those aspects, you now have them taken care of. The next one would be practice. You have prepared, and now you practice before you get to the next one, which is present. And we say in communications, 3/4 of your message is actually done before the talk. When you show up on stage, you're only presenting a quarter of that message. So 3/4 is what you do during the preparation and presentation stage. So how well or how best you handle those first 2 P's determines how best you show up and present. So if you don't put in good hours to practice and you prepare enough, chances are very high that you show up on stage and give this talk which is not really that convincing, or which is not meeting the expectations of your audience. As per maybe if I run a poster and I'm telling people I'm going to do a talk about something and I raise their expectations, then at the end of the day I must be able to put in the hours and I deliver to the best of what they expect, or if need be, I exceed their expectations. Okay. Yes.
Looking at audience in communication, there are times when we have when you're going to communicate to an audience that is not of one generation, like you have the old people and then you have the young people, and then it's a mix-up of all those things. What would you do in such scenarios? What is a communicator going to do so that he can handle everyone in the stage and people feel like as if they're not left out?
Yeah, that's a bit tricky because it falls under the preparation aspect of it. So the whole idea is it starts with understanding the demographics of this audience. For example, if I'm going to give a talk to people in maybe Singapore or China within the age bracket of 18 to maybe 55 years, that's really mixed up. They are from different generations. Some of them are really born in this generation of smartphones and everything, and they feel like I need, yes, getting to a certain age, you need to have a smartphone, you deserve maybe a tab and all those things, which were not maybe a case for our parents when they were growing up. So you as a communicator, at the end of the day, you need to understand what is it that these people prefer, what are their cultural preferences, what are their social preferences and the settings they live in, what is their education background, which part of the region are they coming from, are they people from maybe an urban setting, are they people from a rural setting. Then you go that extra mile to think through what aspects can I incorporate in my talk. For a youthful audience, you might even bring in aspects that engage them. At some point, they will even stand up and you engage them in some activities, and they feel it's very okay for them to have all that as part of your presentation. Whereas my dad, who is maybe approaching 70 years, he may feel like it's really inconveniencing. I'm having this talk, and then along the way, you're telling me you stand up, you do this and this to be part of it. He may not. For him, you need to structure those aspects within your talk which cater for that category of people and their preferences, which requires some homework. You must do some homework and background check as a person, as a communicator, to make sure that those aspects are incorporated within your talk for it to make sense. Otherwise, you will give this talk that you feel like it's really good because it worked so well in Nigeria, and you want to craft the same for the Singapore audience, and at the end of the day, you get shocked. Yes, it doesn't work.
Now I have looked at the audience. I am trying to find the perfect things, the perfect talk to talk about so that it can cater for everyone. How will I rate myself at the end of the day? How am I going to rate myself? Giving myself credit that I have become a good speaker. Oh, how does a communicator rate him or herself?
Yeah, it's ideally it's really hard for you when to really know that you have given something really good, because at the end of the day, it's the feedback that you get from these people that you communicate to that determines. But also the other aspect is that if you're looking at something to do with you becoming a very good and excellent communicator, the whole idea of approaching it would be that you have somebody like a mentor or somebody who is coaching you in that area, so that they can be able to first even do an assessment of where you stand as a person, and then they take you on a journey. Just like you have a kid who is passionate about playing football or tennis or maybe the guitar, and they have this person who has the experience and has been there and is coming in to be their mentor, because the kid wants to take a route or to get to a point where you have been already. So you already know what it takes to get there. So this person exposes you to the opportunities where you can be able to give talks, and then they come back and assess you and then rate you and give you what we call supportive feedback. That's how you progress. Just like you see the football game, the game of sports, you have this coach who is seated somewhere, and then you're on the pitch. You're doing things that you may not actually know that they are bad on the pitch, but you're not actually aware, self-aware. But this person is keeping an eye on you, and after the match, they come and say, look, you really did so well in the first 10, 15 minutes, but when we got to the 20th minute, you really lost track. It's as if you're not playing with your colleagues. The game became just a one-man show. When you get the ball, you want to play alone. It's you alone, you don't want to play with your colleagues. So for you may not know that actually you did that, but because somebody is watching over you, when you're not aware, they are able to now help you navigate to a point where you can now become good and you excel. And the fundamental rule or the idea is that you trust them, that they have the skill set, they have the capacity to be able to move you from where you want to be up to, from where you are up to a point where you would want to be.
This becomes tricky, leaving your destiny into someone's hands. At what point will you know that I have hit the bar and I have become a perfect speaker?
Now, of course, the whole idea is that even when somebody is taking you on that journey, there are points of assessment. For example, like in public speaking, somebody will tell you there are some things which are not really good to do on stage. And they will tell you these are not really good. You cannot show up on stage when you're pocketing. and maybe you're giving your whole talk, half of it you're spending it maybe pocketing. You show up on stage and you have this audience, and maybe half of your time you're just stuck in one spot. You have this whole audience to take care of, but you're just in one spot communicating, and it's like you're just talking to one person within the audience. Somebody will tell you, yes, you were audible, people heard you, your message came out, but you lost touch with your audience. If you can now start moving and you connect with people on the stage, you become more memorable, you become more appealing than when you just keep in one spot. So it's not like you have really surrendered everything. They are showing you that, see, you are doing so well on these 2 3 aspects, but if you can add in the third, fourth, you would turn out so well. You would move from step 2 and get maybe step 4. When you get step 4, and then somebody also looks out for those aspects that you need to really do so well, and then you keep moving. Even you as a person on that journey, you are able to actually also feel that you're making progress. Because me, the people I've coached, like in public speaking, they tell you the first day, really, I had this anxiety, and I could even feel it. My hands were shaking, my tone of voice, and all those things. Then after a week or 2 weeks, they tell you, I feel like I'm much better now. I'm more confident on stage. I no longer shake. I shake for a few seconds, and yes, you can be able to tell the level of progress you're making.
You've trained a number of communicators as you have been in the field. Looking at these common aspects common habits that communicators have that are not ethically right. What are they? What are those common things that people do unknowingly, and yet they appear the other way around to the public when you are communicating?
Yes, for example, like for example, when it comes to the aspect of preparation, one of the aspects to do with preparation, you need to ask yourself like something to do with dress code. For example, how do you want to really dress up when you're showing up to this audience? If I'm maybe communicating within my fellow peers, maybe 25 30 years, I may put in that maybe mini skirt, and it may maybe go well with me, because these are maybe fellow students we are at the university, and it doesn't really turn out to be that bad. But you've been called to give maybe a career talk, maybe to students at Mary Hill High School, and then you show up, you're telling them that, you know what, you need to respect your teachers, you need to be well behaved and the sort. Yes, but you don't exemplify
What you're talking
yes. And when they were telling these students that we are hosting somebody, they said, this is a mother, businesswoman, she even has a daughter here. But when you show up, your dress code is not really that good or reflect something that people should look up to. So dress code is very important, and it's very key. You need to understand your audience. For example, if I'm going to give a talk to lawyers, if I'm going to give a talk to maybe corporate managers, if I'm going to give a talk to students at the university, how do I dress? How do I show up at the end of the day? That can also affect the kind of impact you're going to make when you're conveying this message. Secondly, are some of the manners that we portray on that stage when we are in there. For example, one of the things that is not appropriate, that we really tell people not to do, is to point. If you're emphasizing something and you want to point, we instead say you rather do this to emphasize a point rather than just pointing, because this looks like rude to an audience. So you emphasize people this rather than just pointing to people, because it may turn out to be rude. Some of the other aspect that is not ethical is you pocketing, showing up on stage and you're spending your entire talk pocketing, you're looking bossy, you're like showing these people that I don't care about you, so it's about me. I don't care whether you really respect me for who I am or not. Those are not. So there are really many the aspects that some of us end up doing. You're spending the entire talk scratching yourself, and people are wondering what's the problem. Yes. So there are so many things. Even how you posturize on stage, how you stand in there. You're giving a talk, but are you really standing in an appropriate manner? Is it really the right way that you should be standing on stage as you're giving this talk? Yes, sir.
Thank you. This drives me to another question. Most of the people lose out on jobs when it comes to oral interviewing.
Yes.
Where you have to face your boss, and then these people ask you questions and then you're answering them. that is where a problem is.
Mm.
Why do you think most of the people lose on track when it comes to interviews?
Um, that is fundamentally because our entire learning system of what we go through does not really nurture that, because our entire school system is more of doing so well when it comes to the grades. So we set exams. When you perform so well, you're really good. If you go and graduate with your first class degree, second upper, that aspect of communication or self-expression confidently is not emphasized. It's not emphasized when we're going through the entire school system. So for most people, it is not an easy experience to really handle, because for most of the people that you even encounter, maybe 10, for most people, every out of 10 people, you realize that maybe 70%, 7 out of the 10, they have the fear for public speaking or showing up to smaller or bigger crowds of people to give a talk. And for researches that have been done, it's been rated as the number one fear for most people, far ahead of death, fear of snakes, and even heights for most people. And the whole idea is we are not really trained in that area. So for most people, it's about you get to class, read your books, pass, and go. Even the entire way of how they assess us in school doesn't incorporate in aspects of you have read something, maybe we put you in groups, and then at some point you're coming in to present to people and tell them, this is what I've understood out of this lecture that so and so gave. So for most people, it comes with a lot of fear, because the experience itself, it is a biological kind of experience. It is innate within us, in that when you're encountering people strange for the first time, that fear comes in. That fear is like it's like a defense mechanism that the whole mind is trying to create when you encounter people. Just like when you're somewhere and you all of a sudden you turn and notice that there is a snake, you have to find ways of running because it's a threat to your life. So even for some people, when it comes to that new audience that I've not seen, and these are new faces, that is an experience that most people don't really handle so well. So that fear comes in, and in extreme circumstances, people can even cry at
Sure.
that some stage.
That is a fact. People panic and then they lose control on stage. Why do you think? Before the why question, you've said it is not in our education sector. Would you advocate communication skills to start being taught at an initial stage, and which age would that cater for?
Now, communication skills, the approach is really should be an inclusive one, in a sense that even when we say we are introducing it in schools, maybe from P1, and the homes where these kids come from are not really ready or appreciate it, at the end of the day, they are going to, these efforts that we are putting in when it comes to the school environment, at the end of the day, they will not yield much. So some of us within the entire parenting environment or structure of how even homes are, it doesn't really build self-esteem or confidence in us. So for most parents, you realize that the parenting methods are more about criticizing you. You do something, they look out for those bad things that you do, the weaknesses, and then they criticize you, they penalize you. So along the way, somebody feels like they are really, there's nothing good about them. They are bad. Because even when they do something bad, you never come up to cheer them up. Even when they come up and maybe greet visitors and introduce themselves so well, you don't appreciate them to realize that this is something
It's
that
good.
it's really good. So the entire teaching and everything about mentorship, it's more of you are looking for the error, and then you criticize negatively, and
This
then you're
affects
penalized.
this.
So along the way, when it gets into somebody's mind over time, they feel like maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I was not meant to be good. Maybe some other people are good. For me, I'm meant to be a failure. So at the end of the day, there are things that within our home setting that we are involved in without knowing or unknowingly, which end up affecting the self-esteem of these children and even their confidence to rise up and express themselves so well. So there are some homes where really they don't give that or create that kind of environment where you go out and explore and do the best about yourself and you feel like you're supported. to even try as many times as possible until when you become excellent. So it should be a deliberate approach where we have all the stakeholders, the teacher, the school environment, and even the parent and the community appreciating that this is an essential skill for the 21st century, and getting students or children to appreciate and become good at it. It must be an inclusive approach.
I remember sometime back when I was still in high school.
Yeah.
We were presenting something to the class, and then some students, we were different students from different schools. So we stand up and then present, and then the teacher tries to point out you're from a certain kind of school, you're from a certain kind of school, even when you are not from that school. Do you think the schools we go to affect our communication skills? The schools that we go to, do they determine how fluent we are going to be, how good we are going to become when it comes to communication?
Yeah, schools do, because that school environment, you have the teachers, you have the school environment itself, you have the learners. So these learners are from different backgrounds, and the school as it is itself, it has a certain set of values. When you go to schools like maybe Gayaza, or you go to schools like maybe Tare School, they have different values that they have built within their system, which differ, which at the end of the day, they determine the quality of the students that you're going to produce. So in places where some things are not emphasized, there are schools where you'll find they appreciate a multiplicity kind of approach when they are grooming you. You come to school, yes, we are looking at the grades, but if you have passion for football, you can play basketball, you can play all these other games. We also support you to become, yes, to do your best in all those areas. Whereas in some other places, I may get there and the environment doesn't really support these aspects for me to come up and I do my best. So the environment itself, the school you're in, at the end of the day, there is a way how it shapes you. When you try to do a survey within the region, they will tell you such and such a school is known for this school is known for this, these are chaotic, these are very humble, these are disciplined. They will even find you along the way and they greet you because of the value system that has been established over the years, and that has an impact in regard to who you become before you step out of those gates.